Here we go, number 8 from the quiz review. Looks like a doozy. This one's written a little bit differently. You don't have to do the factoring because it's factored already, but we're going to go through our list of things and figure out what we have here. So we're going to start by looking at wholes. Wholes are where the factors can cancel. X values that make the canceled factors equal 0. There are none of those, so we're going to put none here. Then we're going to go to the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts are where the numerator equals 0, and we have a few x-intercepts. We have x equals 0, x equals 5, and x equals -1. At x equals 5, this is multiplicity 2 because it is squared. Multiplicity 2, which means it has to bounce off or change direction on the graph. So at 5, it will touch and go back up, or if it's coming from the bottom, it will touch and go back down. One of those two options there. X equals -1 is multiplicity 3. That's still going to cross through. Sometimes it looks a little more like a cubic function there at that 0, but sometimes it's so close you can't tell, but it will cross through. But at x equals 5, that's a little newer. It's going to bounce off there. So we have to remember that later. Vertical asymptotes. Vertical asymptotes are values that make the denominator equal 0. So this is going to be at x equals -4, and that's multiplicity 2. So that is either, so at -4, the graph, the asymptotes both have to go up, or they both go down. But when it's even multiplicity, they go in the same direction on either side of the vertical asymptote. Another vertical asymptote is x equals -3, so they're going to be really close to each other. And then x equals 4, which is multiplicity 3, but it's odd. Just that means on one side of the asymptote will go up, on the other side of the asymptote will go down. Our horizontal or slant asymptote, we need to look at our degree. Well, our degree, this is the one part that might take a little more time. It's not really all that hard once you know what to do, but when it's multiplied out, we can easily see the degree of the numerator and denominator. But in this case, we have degree 1, 2, 3. So total, this is going to be degree 6. And notice that each of our terms, like this is 1x and another 1x and a 1x. And when you multiply out all those x's, it's just going to be 1x to the 6th, and you'll get several other things. In the denominator, we have an x, we have a squared to the 1st and cubed. So again, we have x to the 6th, and also again we have that these coefficients are 1. So 1 times 1 times 1, lots of 1s, gives us 1x to the 6th. So the degrees are the same, which means our horizontal asymptote is at y equals the leading coefficient of the numerator over the leading coefficient of the denominator, which is 1. And then our y-intercepts. Y-intercept, you plug 0 in for x. Again, this is another thing that takes a little bit more time once when you don't have it multiplied out. But it's not too bad. We have 0, which actually makes it really nice, times 0 times -5 times 0 plus 1. And we're plugging in 0 because in order to find y-intercepts, we plug in 0 for x. And this is 0 plus 4 over 0 plus 3 over 0 minus 4. So in the top, we have 0 because we have 0 times something. In the bottom, we have not 0, so 0 over some number is equal to 0. Sometimes you'll have to multiply it out. It would be -48, but regardless, it's 0. So the y-intercept is 0. which actually we could have already known because we see that there is a x-intercept at 0, which means it crosses at the origin. Let's go ahead and graph all of our different parts here from our information, and then we'll do the graph. So we have an x-intercept at 0, at 5, and at -1. And then we have vertical asymptotes at -4. And then also at -3. And at 4. We have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 1. All right, so there we have all that information. Now we're going to go ahead and graph this. We're going to graph it in red just so we see the difference here. And let's talk through this graph. As we look at the far right, we see we have an x-intercept here. Let's just think through this. Let's try to come down and come through this. It would have to come back up and go toward a horizontal asymptote. That doesn't work because there's not another x-intercept, so that can't be the top. But you don't always have to try graphing the top. I'm just kind of showing my thoughts so you can see why we know it has to be the bottom. So I should have mentioned we have 3 vertical asymptotes, so it splits it into 4 different sections. Very small section here too. And so we have to figure out each section. All right. Except I did something wrong already. This see if we can erase this, what we just put here. I forgot that this is multiplicity 2, so it bounces off 5. So it does have to come from the top. So if it came from the bottom, it would change direction at 5. It doesn't cross through. It's multiplicity, it's even. So it needs to come off it. So if it was multiplicity 2, it would have to come off 5, but to get to that horizontal asymptote, it would have to cross through the x-axis again, which cannot happen. So it does have to be the top because of that multiplicity 2. So obviously be careful about that. I messed that up. So it has to come up from here. It does cross through our horizontal asymptote, which is okay. That can happen. And then it will come like this. A graph can cross through horizontal and slant asymptotes. It cannot cross through vertical asymptotes. So on the right side of this asymptote, it's going up. So right side of this yellow asymptote, it's going up. This was from this. It's multiplicity 3. It's odd, so they have to go in opposite directions. So over here, it has to be down. And so if it's down, it's going to come up to 0. 0 is just odd, so it crosses through 0. And it's going to cross again through -1. They're very close to each other, but it's going to cross back through -1, and then it has to come down. So there's that part in section 3, the third section there. This asymptote comes from, that's -3. That's just multiplicity odd, which means since on the right side it went down, the left side has to be up. I have to zoom in here just so I can put this in here. So this has to be up, but then it has to turn around, change direction, and go back up again because there's no x-intercepts, so it can't come down and cross through here. This placement right here, we don't know where that is vertically. We could plug in maybe 3.5 to kind of figure out where that little U shape is. I think it's actually probably up a little higher. And then we're to our last branch. So this vertical asymptote at -4 comes from this, and that's multiplicity 2, which we mentioned when it's multiplicity even, it has to go in the same direction. So if the right is up, the right side of the asymptote is up, then so is the left. Or if the right side is down, then so is the left. So In this case, the right side is up, so the left side also has to be going up, and so it's going to look like this. Also, we know this one looks like this because it couldn't be this bottom section because it would have to go through the x-axis again, and there are no other x-intercepts. So that red part there is our graph. It is just a sketch. To make it more accurate, you could plug in some other values. So there you have it. A lot of stuff there, but you got